The day that Bob had to pull me out from under the bed is my most favorite story about Bob ever. And it's the last story in my book. It was likely the most impactful conversation he ever had with me. And it shows you what a phenomenally caring spirit Bob was to his very core. Hey everybody, welcome to an early edition this week of my podcast, The Catalyst Code, and it's early for a reason. Bob Proctor's birthday is this Saturday, July 5th, and after I first met Bob Proctor way back in 1994, he became my 27-year mentor and therefore me friend, who instigated almost unbelievable transformation in my life. So I'm posting this story about Bob 2 days in advance of his birthday for two reasons. First, with Bob gone now, I prefer to just go quiet and take the day to honor his landing on the planet. That was a mighty, mighty shakeup that caused, I'll tell you what, all kinds of change for all kinds of people. And it seems almost more suiting to post these two quick stories about Bob just a day before our U.S. 4th of July Independence Day, because that's what Bob gifted with me, really. A real understanding of just how independent I could be. Independence, as it is defined, is free from outside control. There was no better teacher than Bob Proctor to help me understand that we all have the ability to choose for our lives, that we each are significant catalysts in this world of ours. You are the only one on this planet, in the history of this planet, with your unique combination of skills, talents, and abilities. And that is why you are here. When you understand that, you, and only you, are in charge of directing the magic of your life, you truly have come to understand what freedom really means. Now, what I learned from Bob, wow, it caused such amazing seismic shift in my life that it's why I chose to mentor and teach a world of clients and you out there in my podcast world, just as Bob Proctor did for me. When you understand how much freedom you truly have been gifted with, everything changes. Me and Bob Proctor. There was simply no greater serendipity than being this man's writing partner for nearly 3 decades. Now, I want to get to two short stories today about Bob, but first, just a very quick backstory here. In 1995, Bob and I began working together as writing partners, and that continued for 27 years. In fact, we were working on a project very close to his heart just weeks before he transitioned from our planet. This was his legacy project. I was showing it in one of my classes the other day. It was a giant project. I don't know if it will ever be published, but it was such a pleasure to work on it to the very end with Bob. The writing partnership was clearly the most fun I've ever had in my life, and challenging, growth-wise, because Bob was always coming up with this out-of-the-box idea that he knew we could create. He was the greatest salesman ever, and I could sizzle market, he would say with absolute confidence, to help many millions of people around the world change their lives. He lived every day of his life in assumption and happy expectation of success, which alone was such a contrast to the vast majority of, well, everyone. Beyond that business partnership, though, Bob was an extraordinary mentor and truly a best friend to me. Day in and day out, he patiently mentored this young protege along. I often call him the Jedi Master, me being the little Padawan. Look, I have a little picture of us all the way back in the early days. You see that? Teaching me how to create my world, my way, through the most advanced levels of belief. Because of Bob, I teach this now to my own clients with a plethora of new lessons that just seem to keep rolling out of me. And I suspect Bob has a pretty big hand in that as well, which is what leads me to my first story about Bob Proctor. I call it the 2 a.m. conference call that has been reinstituted. Now, however woo-woo it may sound to you, I'm very sure that Bob is still lurking about in my life right now. In fact, it's more like he took up residence on my couch about a day after he left the planet. He's been quite vocal about this too. In fact, I'm pretty sure it was his idea that we reconvene our coffee hours, which we used to do on the phone, long distance from our kitchen tables. Bob in his kitchen in his Toronto home and me in my kitchen in my Laguna Beach home. Now, we would agree to meet at our respective kitchen tables, and then we would sit down for about an hour and start working out ideas and working through the creative process of all of the writing we were doing, whether it was curriculum or agendas or events or marketing. That was our coffee hour. And I've recently decided that it was time to reinstitute the coffee hour. And I feel like we've agreed to meet at my kitchen table now. And so I pull out a chair over there for his invisible self, and I pour him a cup of coffee too. So that's another story, but staying on point here. I have a really wonderful new consulting client. And the other morning at about 2:30 a.m. my time, I started tapping a note to him. And he replied from his afternoon over there, wondering what I was doing up at 2:30 a.m. here. And I said, lately I've been waking up at 2:30 a.m. and I just assume it's Bob wanting us to get to work. When he was on the planet in physical form, all those almost 30 years, he was always at his desk by 5:30 or 6 in the morning, Eastern Standard Time, waiting for me to wake up in Pacific Time 3 hours later. He used to kid me that he would watch the clock tick tock, 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 and he would holler in his head, "Wake up, Di, we've got work to do." Now I figure he's just louder in his new dimension, and it's actually working. I sit bolt upright in bed, wide awake. I throw off the covers, and I'm trotting out to my weekly project journal there on the kitchen table before I even think to look at the clock. And just like those old days when I would actually jolt awake in an ungodly pre-dawn hour and call Bob, I can still hear him chuckle in a very satisfied way. He loves that he can zero in on me in the depths of my sleep and get me working on a new idea. And I love that. And I love working with him on our coffee hours in the mornings too. Now, my second story, I had been threatening a book. Initially, I was going to call it Conversations with Bob. Now I think I'm going to call it Coffee with Bob. And I've been working on that book for about 4 years. Well, actually, Bob actually wrote the foreword to the book. So I can imagine he's thinking it's time for me to get the book out too. So I've decided to start publishing bits and pieces of it here and there, So the reason why I've mentioned the book is the day that Bob had to pull me out from under the bed is my most favorite story about Bob ever. And it's the last story in my book. It was likely the most impactful conversation he ever had with me. And it shows you what a phenomenally caring spirit Bob was to his very core. And as I think about this, it reminds me of that Randy Newman song, "You've Got a Friend in Me," which was very popular during the first Toy Story song, right? If you've got troubles, I've got them too. There isn't anything I wouldn't do for you. We stick together and can see it through 'cause you've got a friend in me. Bob was always that person to me. He was always that friend to me, and he just never let me go. So here's my favorite story of Bob. And if I get a little teary-eyed, it's more about the generosity that he showed me and the care that he showed me when I was going through one of my worst days ever. Now, I'm going to read some of this because what he said was just so memorable, and I don't want to get it wrong. So it all started with a voicemail from Bob that was like, "Di," it was Bob on my voicemail, "come out from under the bed. Come out from under the bed. I know you're down there with the dust bunnies. It's time to come out now. I'm waiting, Di." And as I heard that voicemail, I sort of chuckled. I still had tears dripping down my cheeks. So the story is that my longtime boyfriend had called me 3 days prior, rather excitedly and on top of the world, to tell me that he had found the love of his life. And the sideline is, it wasn't me. So I had retreated under the bed. And I was thinking dust bunnies could easily be my new source of carbo loading. And I thought the view down here is just great. I think I'm going to be here for a while. It's just fine. I was absolutely morose. But in that moment, I knew that there was no avoiding Bob. There was no avoiding Bob. He had not only been my second client since I started my little company, he was actually my second client on my first full day of business. but he had become my closest mentor and my friend. And I thought, if I don't crawl out from under the bed, he will send an army of our combined friends, like the ever cheerful Mark Victor Hansen or the gentle pragmatist Gina Hayden. He could even put Gina Hayden on a plane and send her here to pull me out from under the bed by my armpits. Now, I think for a few moments of this dire possibility, as I'm sitting there under the bed with the dust bunnies, and I thought, okay, I need to call him back. So I hit redial, and he says, "Hi, Di. So are you out from under the bed?" And I kind of mumbled something gloomy and unintelligible because I was still crying. And he says, "I heard from someone who heard from someone about what happened. How are you doing?" And I kind of mumbled something gloomy and unintelligible. And the tears really started then, because I have this person who's bigger than life, a global presence really, taking the time to pull me out from under the bed. It was a gratitude thing in a weird, shaky, tearful way. And he said, "You know, Di, it's okay to stop feeling like your heart has been broken by a man who didn't love you as much as you wanted him to. In fact, it's the healthiest thing in the world you can do. He's not responsible for breaking your heart. Only you are responsible for letting that happen." I am silent. And he said, "He probably loved you, but he wound up loving someone else. And that's the place he chooses to be. For whatever reason is in his mind, it's what's best for him." Di is still silent. And he said, "It's time to bundle him up in a big ball of gold light and poof, wish him the very best as you release him. You know how you used to blow on those big dandelion balls when you were a kid and you'd see all those white seeds flutter out into the breeze? That's what you want to picture. Just let him go on his way." Di is still silent. And Bob said, "How he chooses to feel about another person has nothing to do with how you should feel about yourself. He chose in that direction. He's on a different path now. You are on a different path now. You might feel that he coerced it, that his decision pushed you onto separate paths, but this is your new path now. One day you're going to look back and you're going to be so happy that you're on this path, and you're going to understand why." He said, "Remember who you really are, Di. You're not a human being with the dust bunnies down there. You're a unique presence that is only one you. Even when you have days when you don't feel that you have support from this guy or your fellow humans, understand that you are always supported and guided by something much bigger, because you are much bigger. And God is always looking out for the best for Diane. Always. And so am I." And I said, "Thanks, Bob." And he said, "If you have trouble believing that you're bigger, I will believe for you, okay? Because I know what's true about you." And I said, "Thanks." And he let us sit there for a second. And then he said, "Okay, call me tomorrow, Di, when you've had a shower from those dust bunnies, because we have a lot of work to do." That was Bob Proctor to me. Changed my life. The Catalyst Code, the podcast, the teaching that I do, it's all because of Bob Proctor. It's all because of him. And every magical experience that I've experienced since he came into my life, so much to do with his direction and the transformation of me along the way. I really adore that man. I would not say I adored that man, because I know he's still hanging out on the couch and we're still having coffee every morning. Thank you, Bob, for being such an amazing guiding light, and for seeing somebody who thought she was a puny human stuck in the matrix that she didn't know was the matrix. and for helping me rescue myself from that world. Happy birthday.